Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Westside UU Church's Sunday morning worship for August 2nd. I am the Reverend Carol Badeau. I am privileged to serve Westside as minister, and I'm glad to see you today. Today, we're going to be talking about mask wearing, a little history, and also a little psychology around mask wearing. But first, a few announcements. Let's begin with an explanation of how our new schedule works, because I know it's a change. So here's how our new schedule is going to work for at least the foreseeable future through the end of October. We will be holding weekly interactive worship gatherings. These are going to be either by Zoom, video conferencing, or outdoors at our facility every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. from 10 to 10:30. Now, this is a change from our usual 11 a.m. time, and that's because for the Sundays when we gather outside, we want it to be a little cooler. So 10 to 10:30 each week, there will be an interactive experience available. And then at 10:30, that will go right into our coffee hour, again on Zoom. And if you happen to be coming for one of our in-person gatherings, coffee hour will last long enough that you can go home and check in towards the second half of coffee hour. Concurrent with those interactive events, every Sunday morning at 10 a.m., there will also be a pre-recorded message like this one. Please note that these messages are all pre-recorded. They are posted on our Facebook page. They are recorded earlier in the week. So right now I'm actually at a Zoom worship service as you're listening to this, if you're listening between 10 and 10:30. So pre-recorded messages. So these are all different ways you can connect in. Now, if you are a person who is relatively new to our community and you'd like to be involved in interactive worship, but don't know how to do that, here's how you can get more involved. First, go to our website. Check out our webpage and see if you, in fact, are really interested in being part of our community. If you are, there's a contact us link there that you can click on to get to our page. You'll fill out a form, and our membership coordinator, Wendy Weiss, will contact you. You can also subscribe to our newsletter, which is a great way to find out what's going on. So if you're new and you don't yet have links for coffee hour and things like that, go ahead and check out our website, look at our newsletter, and get in touch with us so we can connect you. If you're already a part of Westside and you're already in our database and you're already connected with the community in that way, there are multiple ways you can get the links for our interactive gatherings. So as I said, some interactive services are outdoors every other week and some are by Zoom. That schedule is on our website. You can find it there. Also, on our website, in the members area, you will find the links for our Zoom Sunday morning worship and conversation. This is the same link for coffee hour every week. It's going to be the same link for the foreseeable future. There is a password associated with it. But once you get that link, you will be able to use it indefinitely. So it's available in the members area of our website. It's also available on our Facebook group. So we have a public page where these videos are posted. We also have a private members and friends group on Facebook. And the links will also be posted there so you can get them there. So these are all different ways you can connect in to participate. And we're looking forward to seeing you. A couple other quick announcements. Our Welcoming Congregation Renewal team has been doing some great work to continue the work of Westside being welcoming to LGBTQ+ people. Recently, we posted a number of Pride videos. Our summer intern, Reagan Monday, posted a number of videos, the 30 Days of Pride. So if you haven't had a chance to check those out, go ahead and watch them. They are wonderful and informational. We need, as part of our ongoing process to be a certified, active, welcoming congregation, we need to demonstrate the work we're doing. And one of the things we'd like to do this year is have survey results of your responses to those Pride videos. So please, if you are a member or friend and you've watched those videos, or someone who's just interested in following our community and you've watched those videos, look there on our page for the survey link. and fill out the survey what you think about those videos. And finally, a note also about our ongoing work for Welcoming Congregation. For the next couple of months, we will be having a Share the Plate partner that is part of our donations. And you will be able to find on this video a donate button. It's westsideuuc.org/donate. You can go there and donate to our congregation. For the next couple of months, our partner that we're going to be sharing some of our plate donations with is Positively Living, an organization in Knoxville that supports people living with HIV/AIDS. And I invite you to look into their website and their information. We are hoping to do some future worship and informational meetings with them. So with all that, I invite you to take a deep breath as we begin our time of reflection together. Each week we invite the bowl to sound to call us present, and also we light a chalice. This week I'm going to read some words from Carolyn S. Owen Toole, and then I'm going to invite the bowl to sound and light the chalice as we just simply deepen into a time of reflection. Fragile and rooted. See a blossom in your mind's eye. Allow it to fill the interior of your imagination. Greater perfection of form in nature cannot be imagined. With inward gaze, absorb each wondrous fluted petal. Slide down its humid surface until you drop as the dew into its velvety core. Immerse your senses in this safe chamber. Such fragile beauty gives impulse to weep. Now slowly reverse the journey. As you ascend the shaft towards wider light, turn your imagination around and around to see its many facets. Stored within is the memory of all flowers. Marvel that this creation, while utterly fragile, yet undaunted, boldly buds forth, turning resolutely towards the sun. We, too, shimmer with expectation, exuding our own illumination, color and scent. Vulnerable. Still, we venture our lives courageously toward hope and light, at once fragile and rooted. Behind that mask. So I learned something interesting this last week about pandemics and face masks. I've heard comments in recent months comparing our current global COVID-19 crisis to previous pandemics, but I never really looked into that or studied that until this last week. I've been finding myself personally struggling to be comfortable with face masks, even though I know they're a good idea, and even though I totally support wearing them and wear them, I still have felt uncomfortable. So I decided to do some research into the history of masks and mask wearing to learn about their use in both medical and non-medical settings over thousands of years of human history. And I learned all sorts of random and interesting facts. And here are just a few of those. So did you know that masks were first used or recorded being used for religious and ritual purposes in rituals and rites of passage and things like that over 3,500 years ago? Our first recorded evidence of mask use comes from China. And over hundreds and hundreds of years, these uses were actually formalized into groups and particular specific uses. Now, in ancient Greece, starting in the 5th century before the Common Era, masks were used in stage theater. They were used to help audiences from a distance be able to see the emotions that the actors were supposed to be expressing. And this lineage of the Greek masks shows up in our modern theaters. We have that classic image of the comedy and tragedy masks that you'll see in theater iconography. The tragedy mask is actually named Melpomene, which is a daughter of Zeus, the muse associated with tragedy. And the comedy mask is known as Thalia, the muse, another daughter of Zeus, associated with comedy. Now, these masks were actually used extensively to celebrate rituals of the god Dionysus. In Japan, in another culture, in the 11th century, masks became an essential part of the traditional No theater, which is the oldest surviving form of Japanese theater, and it combines music, dance, and acting to recreate famous stories from Japanese literature, often Buddhist literature. Many of us are more familiar with the Renaissance European use of the mask for masquerade balls or parties, which became popular during that time. And of course, now we think of masks in a theatrical setting. They're very complex. We have all sorts of technical things we can do with masking people. But what about medical uses of masks? How did that happen? When did that get started? So by the 14th century, at the time of the plague in Europe, masks were beginning to be used to do something that was understood as neutralizing miasmas. Miasmas were understood as airs or vapors that traveled about and caused illness. So masks were used to neutralize these miasmas. You might remember the image of the doctors with the big bird beak cone masks. They filled those with herbs and medicinals to ward off sickness. And they traveled the cities, and you'd see these images of the doctor in the cape with the big cone, making things all more scary and creepy at a time when things were pretty frightening already. Now, that particular use of the medicinal mask was pretty much done by the 1700s. But there was another more common use in the popular public image in the world during the 1700s and early 1800s. That's more like our common face covering. During that time period, people would use handkerchiefs. They would use handkerchiefs filled with lavender or scented with perfume to help keep away the nasty odors of crowded spaces in a time when sanitation was fairly limited. Now, it wasn't until the late 1800s with Louis Pasteur's discovery of germs, and then next British surgeon Joseph Lister's theory of germ theory, and that was his theory that these little critters that Pasteur had described, that these little critters were actually responsible for causing illness and infection. It was only at that time that masks became understood in the scientific and medical community as approaches to preventing illness. Now, originally, at the turn of the 19th into the 20th century, face masks were used mostly by surgeons in actual medical procedures because they understood that this might help prevent infection in wounds. The first major use of masks, more widely by the public, didn't happen until about 1910 or 1911 during the Manchurian plague in China. And this was a particularly nasty disease, which is said to have had nearly a 100% mortality rate. According to that great online resource, Wikipedia, here's what they say about the Manchurian plague. It was believed to have highlighted the importance of a multinational medical response, setting precedents for later organizations such as the World Health Organization, and Cambridge-trained Dr. Wu Lin-Tei's widespread promotion of cloth plague masks by doctors, nurses, patients, and people who had had contact with them. And to the degree that it was possible the general population at large, this was the first time such an epidemic containment measure had been attempted. Wikipedia goes on to say that the event also was influential in establishing the use of personal protective equipment to stop the spread of disease, and it's credited for the origins of the modern hazmat suit. Isn't that fascinating? Now, a few years later, masks were widely encouraged for public use when the Spanish flu pandemic hit in 1918. And this is where things got really interesting for me. The Spanish flu pandemic lasted for 2 years and 2 months, from February of 1918 until April of 1920. And it had multiple waves. It was particularly deadly, possibly because it was layered atop the effects of World War I, in which many people, especially military personnel, were already in health crises and under extreme circumstances. But more interestingly, mask use during this time had some fascinating psychological repercussions. So, the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918 had some interesting side effects societally. Now, that flu was named the Spanish flu not because it started in Spain, or even because Spain had the highest number of cases, or that it was worse there than anywhere else. In fact, it's named the Spanish flu because of Spain's non-participation in the war. What was actually happening was that Spain wasn't actively participating in the war, and while other countries were, they did not want to report their death tolls accurately because they did not want to appear weak to their enemies. So Spain actually reported accurate numbers of infections and deaths, hence the name. And during the time of the Spanish flu pandemic, some cities, including Seattle and Denver and Phoenix and San Francisco, issued mask laws requiring citizens to wear masks in public. Now, at first there was widespread compliance, but as I said, there were many waves of this illness. And so after the initial success of the masks and the first or second wave sort of died down, the mask requirements were rolled back. And then another deadly wave hit. In January of 1919, the mask rules were put back in place. And this was a big deal because people resisted. Violators were being fined and even jailed for not wearing masks, and there was active resistance. In 1919, the Anti-Mask League was formed in San Francisco. And its supporters, at their first meeting, they had upwards of 5,000 people in attendance. This anti-mask league refused to wear masks. The resistance was imitated in other cities, and the anti-maskers became known as mask slackers. A Red Cross public service announcement actually stated that the man or woman or child who will not wear a mask is now a dangerous slacker. So here we are again now, right now, dealing with a pandemic and being urged, in some places required, to wear face masks to prevent the spread of the virus. And again, many people are either struggling with that or ignoring it or outright resisting it. Why is that? What's up with the psychology of mask wearing that causes us not to feel okay for some of us, or for others to feel perfectly fine with masks? So some psychologists attribute this particular difference in people to what is known, I'm going to try to pronounce this correctly, to what is known as pareidolia, which describes something we have all experienced, which is the tendency to fill in the blanks visually. Pareidolia refers to our human tendency, for example, to see shapes in clouds, or faces in forest scenes, or human images in the moon. A recent article in Psychology Today says that our brains may be biased to detect faces because the error of missing a face in the undergrowth or when it's really there but hiding from us, that could cost a tribe member in a more wilderness setting or a different setting back in the day of routine raids in our ancestral environment. That could cause you to lose your life. So perceptual filling in of missing bits not visible to us could be life-saving. So we have a tendency to fill in the blanks when we look at a space where we know there might be or should be something that's hidden from our view. Many studies have shown that hidden aspects of human faces, for example, when hair covers part of the face, covers a cheek, or when a beard covers a chin, that often promotes attraction because we fill in the gaps with what we desire. But in other cases, say in the case of a hidden spot in the woods or a cloudy evening, we may feel threatened because we imagine scary things in the hidden space. So to put a point on it, masks generate projections from our unconscious onto the wearer. And therefore, it's our unconscious projections that have a huge influence on how we feel about others we see wearing masks or putting one on ourselves. For me, facial expressions are essential to how I do my job. They're not just part of how I keep my life comfortable and familiar, but they're actually how I do my job. I need to see what someone's face looks like when they tell me I'm fine. Right? There's a difference between I'm fine and I'm fine. Yes, I can hear that in their voice, but facial expressions matter a lot. I observe cues, subtle cues, in how eyes match a mouth, how the tension of the jaw or the tightness of the lips tells me what I'm hearing is true or not true. When I try to provide connection or support for someone, these cues are essential. So masks make me nervous. I feel uncertain talking to someone or interacting with someone because I'm used to essential information that comes from the face. Psychologists say that on the flip side of that, for many people, actually people may be uncomfortable showing their full vulnerability or their emotions. And so when that is the case, the mask may make them feel more comfortable. And I'm not saying that, hey, if you're comfortable with masks, you must be hiding your emotions. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that our deep unconscious projections affect how we respond to mask wearing. So I would invite you this week to contemplate that. How do you actually feel about mask wearing? This is different than what you think about it. I can say that I think it's a great idea and still feel uncomfortable with it. So think about how you feel about the masks. What does it trigger for you? What assumptions do you make? How do you fill in the blanks? And remember that other people are doing that too. Let us be kind and compassionate with each other. Perhaps thinking of things this way might help us start some conversations. If someone has practices that you are uncomfortable with, that you would like to talk to them about, now's a great time to do that. And it's great to go into that with curiosity rather than judgment. You might ask someone, what are your assumptions about masks? What are your beliefs or your feelings about wearing a mask? Maybe this will open us all up to a greater sense of connection, even though we can't necessarily see each other's faces as much as we might like to be able to do. Let us commit to being connected in community. Let us commit to staying connected to one another, no matter what happens. As we end this time together, know that even though we extinguish our chalice, we remain connected to each other. The light of truth, the fire of commitment, and the warmth of community go with us as we leave this space and go into our week. Go in peace.